Welcome, everyone, to episode 2 of the Warships Podcast with Kellorn and
Kami.
Today we're going to be talking a little bit about the 0.5.9 changes that are coming up. We'll talk a little bit about the Krasny Krim, and we'll have a little discussion on the tactics and a tactics subject about flags and consumables. At the end, we'll have DerekSlide coming by for an interview. We'll at some point during the podcast, we'll announce a contest that we're going to have for our second episode. So with that in mind, Kami, have you been able to look at the 0.5.9 changes at all? And is there anything that stands out to you as being kind of the most important part of those changes?
I have got to look at the 5.9 changes, and I've actually done a little public testing. And the biggest change will be smoke boundaries and the situational awareness not having to use a captain skill point. The smoke boundaries is very interesting because a lot of people, I think, don't understand how smoke completely works. You see a lot of destroyers just glide out of their smoke. And I think with the ability to turn on the smoke boundaries, it'll allow people to figure out, how far they can go before they're out of their own smoke. And I think it's a great addition to the game. I know there's been a mod done by a wargaming employee from Russia that's been constantly put in Aslans, and I know a lot of people in OP, a lot of people in the game use it, but it's a great addition to the game as a whole. And I think that it'll cause more problems for battleships because more destroyers will understand where they can go.
One of the interesting things that I am looking forward to with the 5.9 changes is that I learned a lot about how smoke works through team battles and through the rank this season with the smoke boundaries on knowing when I'm in smoke, when I'm not, even when I'm playing a destroyer, when I'm playing a battleship using somebody else's smoke. I think it's really great that ability is going to be in the base client and not be a modification that kind of gives an advantage to people that know that modification's out there and that everybody's going to be able to take advantage of it if they want. Now, the other thing that I noticed is that the people playing ranked were much more cognizant of how smoke works. As soon as I started going back to playing random battles after the ranked season was done, there's a huge number of people that just don't seem to understand how the smoke mechanics work. So, Kami, you want to give us a quick overview of how the smoke mechanics are going to be changing a little bit here in 0.5.9, and what should people be looking out to do going forward to make the most of their smoke?
The smoke screen is changing in the sense that before it would take 3 seconds for you to go into your smoke, for it to hide you, and if you're going past a certain speed, you'll just keep drifting, and the smoke will not cover you, and you'll stay detected. Now what they're doing is when you hit the smoke button, the smoke screen will happen 2 seconds after the consumable is activated. And if you're going under 12.5 knots, the smoke will cover you in motion. So if you're going quarter speed and you're deploying your smoke, you'll be hidden. But if you're going over 12.5 knots, the smoke will not cover your ship and you'll stay spotted. It's a great mechanic. It's a great improvement on the mechanic because I've noticed a lot after the quote-unquote situational awareness fix. A lot of destroyers were getting shot in their smoke still, and they thought they were in their smoke. And I think it was because there was the delay between going unseen and when you pop your smoke. Because I don't think people understood that you still have a firing debuff on you, even if you're going into your smoke. So it's a great improvement on the smoke screen that they're allowing it to cover you if you're going under a certain speed. Now, I do warn you that we don't know. It may not work the way they're saying it's working yet because I haven't played a destroyer on the public test yet. But I've seen destroyers go into smoke that are slowing down and they've disappeared right away. So I think it's going to be straight. I think it's going to be working, and I think it's going to be good. And I think it's going to cause battleship players and cruiser players more headaches.
Yeah, it is interesting. I was thinking about that this morning before we started our podcast today. We talked a little bit last week about that smoke feels overpowered in the competitive meta, and then Wargaming is now making that smoke even stronger. I see why they did it. And I think these changes are welcome and they make sense because I didn't think it made sense for a destroyer that destroyers were, the way that smoke was working previously is that a destroyer would make a new puff of smoke only if it wasn't in its previous puff of smoke. So to make a line of smoke, it necessarily had to be detected the whole time it was making the smoke, which that didn't make sense to me so much. So I'm glad to see that they're fixing it, but at the same time, I also feel like maybe that they're going to make it a little too strong.
I agree. I'm not a destroyer player. I did play destroyer during ranked, and I know the impact and significance of a destroyer during ranked. I mean, we played ranked games together where I was smoking you up, and
Absolutely.
It made a huge difference in the game. I mean, if one battleship has destroyers that are helping the battleship and the other team doesn't, the battleship that's getting smoked up teams almost always wins because there's teamwork. And I think now with the way they're changing smoke, and there is a caveat. It says if the smoke screen is being set while the ship is in motion and enemies are straight ahead or to the side, the ship will always be spotted according to the rules. Now, the rules are, but I'm not entirely sure what the rules are for smoke, other than if you're moving at too fast of a speed, the smoke won't cover you, and you'll be drifting out of your smoke. But you made a good point when you said a ship that's laying down a smoke screen is spotted while it's laying it down, which doesn't make any sense to me as well, because the ship should be covering itself in smoke before it's covering anybody else in smoke.
I agree. So a couple things before we move on. I was able to see a video of how the smoke screen looks and how the smoke circles look on the test server, and it looks really slick. The old mod was very kind of clunky. It just had it would show you each circle in turn. The new one, actually, as you create a new smoke puff, it erases the border and it looks like one big puff of smoke instead of a bunch of circles on the water, which I thought was really cool. So did you get a chance to see that?
I did see that, and the only thing that bugged me about it was the line around your smoke cloud was kind of it wasn't bright enough. Like, you couldn't see it all the time. It seemed like they need to add some more vibrance to the smoke cloud so that you can see it. And the one thing the smoke circles did that I liked was you knew when your smoke was running out because the circles would go away. I don't know if that's the case with the in-game edition.
Yeah, we'll look forward to seeing how that all works out. So one last thing about situational awareness. So if you have situational awareness on your captain, that point is going to be shifted to basics or survivability unless you have more than 1 point, at which point you'll just be refunded. Now, there's actually been a fair amount of controversy about this, both on the forums and on Reddit and various other places, because people are saying, hey, look, maybe we don't want basics or survivability. So a lot of people are going out there and grinding another point so that they make sure that they have at least 2 points in that first row of skills. But some of us have just a 15-point captain, and grinding out that 16th point isn't exactly realistic in the time that we have available for all of those ships. So I guess I'm a little perturbed about the fact that I may end up having to respec my captain to something because I'm not necessarily going to want basics of survivability. But at the same time, it's nice that they have a mechanic in place, and I can see that they don't want to write code to basically break your captain and not have a first row skill, even if you would have to spend it before you could play that captain. But it doesn't make sense to give a full-on refund of all of the captain skills. I there's some people calling for that, but I think that's too much. What have your thoughts been on that issue?
I'm happy that they're adding situational awareness into the game as not a captain skill, but an actual just part of the game, because I feel like a lot of people in low tier to even mid tier, even high tier, they don't pay attention to where they are. They don't put a point into it. They don't know if they're spotted. They just get wrecked. And my thought on getting refunded points, honestly, it's not a complete tech tree or captain skill tree fix. I mean, it's just they're moving one skill out and they're just moving the point over. Now, I get people would be mad that it's going to go into something else, maybe something they don't need, but it could be something they do need, because I mean, on battleships you use that.
Oh, absolutely. On my battleships, I'm not as concerned about it, because that would be what I would choose naturally, is go ahead and pick basic survivability. However, on my destroyers, I'd much rather have basic firing training.
And there you go. And that's the thing that I know a lot of people are complaining about, is that on destroyers, maybe even on cruisers, they want basic firing training. And I get that. And I think they should just refund the point and not put it into anything, because when you put it into basic survivability, you're choosing where that point goes and not the player.
Yeah, and I think that's the basis of the thing. So it'll be interesting to see how Wargaming deals with that particular controversy. So speaking of controversies in Wargaming, Wargaming introduced a new premium cruiser, Russian premium cruiser this week called the Krasny Krim. And there's been a lot of uproar about this ship because it's essentially a T4 Svetlana that's been up-tiered to Tier 5. So do you think that that's a realistic competitive ability?
Well, I'm going to say no. I haven't seen one personally in game, and I don't know anyone that's bought one. But the Svetlana, to me, was pretty underpowered for even Tier 4. And now you're going to up it to Tier 5, as a premium. So people are going to spend real money on essentially a Tier 4 ship that's been upgunned. And now it can see Tier 7s. I mean, a Colorado will just get rid of a Krasny Krim. They won't even be there. And I feel like Wargaming is doing a disservice to its customers by doing this. And I understand that they wanted to put the ship in there for historical reasons or whatever the reasoning may be. But I feel like the ship, as a ship in the game, is not a very good ship.
Well, it's interesting. There's a couple of points that interest me about this. And I do have a friend that did end up buying it. And he said he really likes it because he likes having so many guns to play with in a Tier 5 ship. And I get that. And honestly, I disagree with you slightly. I felt that the Svetlana was a very strong Tier 4 ship. I was able to do much more with it than I was really expecting when I was playing with it, when I was grinding up the tech tree over the last couple of weeks. But at the same time, they've kind of done this before, up-tiering a ship and calling it a premium. Because essentially the Molotov is simply an up-tiered Kirov with slightly better guns. And I think that is where kind of Wargaming ran afoul this time, is just because if they had been able to give the Krasny Krim slightly better guns, because they're essentially the same guns that are on the Tier 4 Svetlana, if they had made them fire faster or given them a little bit more fire chance or something like that, I think that it could have been a valid Tier 5 ship. But because just like the Molotov is a quite good Tier 6 premium, because it's got a little bit better than that Tier 5 Kirov.
Yeah, I agree. The Molotov is a very good Tier 6. I've played almost 150 battles in it, and I've won over 90% of them. I feel like the Molotov does really well getting up-tiered, but I fear for the Krasny Krim, like you said, because it didn't really get anything. I mean, it got more guns, I believe.
Yeah, a little bit.
But that doesn't mean anything if there's a Tier 7 or even a Fuso or a New Mexico or anything is just going to look at it, and there's no fear factor. They're like, oh, look at this guy. He's in a Krasny Krim. I fear that it's a kind of like a money grab, I guess, is how I feel.
Well, I mean, playing devil's advocate for a second, if it was top tier, if it's, you're top tier in a Tier 5 match, I think it would do okay.
Oh, I agree. Like, I think any ship that we see as underpowered or not as good, if they get to be top tier, I think they can be made to work. But I fear that ships like the Krasny Krim, which are underpowered for maybe even its own tier, they go up tiered and they get wrecked. And I feel that people are going to think, oh, what's wrong with my ship? Well, yeah. It's not necessarily what's wrong with your ship. It's just your ship isn't really suited to fight ships that are higher tier than you.
I agree. And it's going to have a hard time setting fires on some of those Tier 7s with their innate resistance to getting set on fire. So that brings me to our kind of contest for the week. So for our listeners, for the second episode, we're going to give away a Molotov class cruiser. To win it, you need to play Tier 1 to Tier 6 ships and you need to give us a screenshot between now and Sunday at 6 p.m. Central Time, Sunday the 24th of July. And if you post that screenshot with the highest damage screenshot that's posted to our Facebook page, will win a Molotov class cruiser. So the link to our Facebook page will be posted with our podcast. And if you can get on there, and if you're, we would appreciate it if you give us a like, and post a screenshot with high damage numbers, again, between Tier 1 and Tier 6, and send that over to us, and we will, whoever gives us the highest one will gift with a Molotov class cruiser.
Yes, and the Molotov is very good, and it's very worth it to do the contest.
Excellent. So let's get back to a little bit to the 0.5.9 changes. The next big change that I see out of the 0.59 changes is the changes to the American battleship armor models. Did you see how that's going to affect, or what do you feel about how that's going to affect the American battleships going forward?
I have looked at a couple pictures, and I think it's going to help the U.S. battleships immensely. And don't forget the Warspite is also involved in that. The Warspite is being fixed as well a little bit. But I think it's going to do wonders because from what I know, looking at the original models, there weren't a lot of angles. And that's what they're trying to fix. They're trying to, round off some things, make the ship's armor more effective.
One of the interesting things that I find is that both this change and the smoke changes would have had a really big effect on the ranked season that just finished. And it's interesting to me that they waited to the ranked season was finished before they released this. And I think it's good that they did, because if they had released this in the middle of the ranked season, what do you think would have happened?
Well, a lot of those shots where Colorados and Negatos are hitting each other for 15, 18K. I think it'd only be the Colorado hitting the Negato for that much. Because, when armor models change, I think it would help. It would have helped the Colorado definitely more than helped the Negato, because they're not fixing the armor model on the Negato. I think it would have caused to see more Colorados, I think, than Negatos.
I agree. And I look forward to seeing how that's going to affect gameplay. From what I understand, of people on the test survey said, hey, look, if you're not angled and you're broadside, you're still going to take max damage. It's the people that are angling properly that are going to be able to take advantage of that. And honestly, the Amagi, not the Nagato so much, but the Amagi and the Izumo and the Yamato, they already have very strong armor models when you're in an angled position, in my opinion. So I think this is trying to bringing those American battleships up to that kind of level.
I agree. And, the North Carolina is already very strong. And, that was the preview that they showed of what they're doing in the armor model. And it was already a very strong ship after they buffed it. And now they're going to buff its armor, which is going to make it even better. The Iowa, they'll be interesting. The biggest one they'll be interested in will be the Montana. And the Montana has always struggled 1v1 versus the Yamato. And even with the armor changes, I don't know how it's going to be fixed, because the Yamato's penetration power is just so great.
It's interesting to keep kind of being incremental changes to the Montana. First we got the accuracy buff, then they sped it up a little bit to 30 knots, and now we're getting an armor revamp on the American battleships. I feel like they're trying to slowly creep towards where that Montana really needs to be to compete with it at Tier 10. I
agree. The big, the armor for the Montana, it's when you're in a battleship and you take 8, 9K, we're used to it. But the biggest problem with the Montana is when it's bow on, trying to defend itself against the Yamato, and it still takes 30K through the bow, and doesn't have the ability to reciprocate that damage. You fire back with the Montana and you do, some
nothing.
Yeah, or nothing. The Yamato just laughs at you. And that's just because the penetration value on the 16-inch guns for the Montana are not up to speed. And unless they fix that, the Montana will never be able to compete 1v1 with the Yamato. But in the overall aspect of the game, when I play the Montana, I just avoid the Yamato. And I go and pick on everything else. And then when it comes down to it, the Yamato's outnumbered and can't kill all of us.
And that's exactly how I play my Montana as well. The Montana was the first tier 10 ship that I got when I played when the open beta was released. I really enjoy it. It is the preeminent cruiser killer at tier 10, in my personal opinion. You can delete cruisers like no tomorrow with that thing.
I agree, and like I never got to the Montana when it was enclosed. I got to, I think, the Iowa. Never bought the Montana before it closed ended. And people said that the Montana back and closed was awesome. I didn't know. But
I heard that too, and that was why when it came to open beta, I was like, I'm going to go up the American battleships, because I had already played the Yamato, and it was good, and it was strong. But I was thinking, I wonder if in a competitive mode, if the extra guns are going to make the difference on the Montana. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go up the American battleship line first and get that Montana. And I got there and I was like, I think I made a mistake.
I don't know if you made a mistake, but the Yamato, if there was ever competitive meta at 10s, I would think to see more Yamatos than Montanas, but you never know. Just depending on how it's set up, maybe you get 3 battleships in your competitive meta, and you can go 2 Yamatos and you bring an AA barge Montana. I don't know.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that works out. So one of the last things I wanted to talk about in the 059 changes are the matchmaking changes that were made. The ones that are really interesting to me, the low tier cruisers, that actually makes sense. There's really not a whole lot to say. The tier 3 and tier 4 cruisers really just didn't compete against tier 5 ships, so eliminating them from the tier 5 matches, I think that makes total sense. But the interesting thing to me is what they did to the carriers. So the higher tier carriers, 7, 8, and 6, 7, and 8, they're only going to see a 1 tier spread of matchmaking. So you're not going to be seeing tier 7 carriers competing against tier 9 carriers anymore. And I actually think that's also going to be a really good thing for carrier drivers, and maybe bring some carrier drivers back at the high tiers, because realistically, we really don't see that many of them.
Well, with this new patch, tier 6 battleships around the world will weep because they do not get to kill Karlsruhes anymore. But on a good note, yes, the carrier changes have been much needed for a long time. I mean, when you're in a Hiryu and you see a Taiho on the other team, you might have an Essex on your team. So it might be an Essex and a Hiryu versus a Taiho and a Ranger. I mean, when you're that lower tier carrier, you feel so underpowered. I experienced this the other day. We had a two carrier game, and they were 2 tiers apart. And the Hiryu literally said, "I'm just not going to play the game because there's nothing I can do." And that feeling right there, for not only your teammates but you as a whole, I mean that's a terrible feeling, that you feel like you can't do anything. Now, could he have done something? Yes, instead of quitting, of course. But the tier spread was too much. Carrier spread is definitely something that needed to be fixed. I mean, 1 tier spread is fine. And on a side note, it needs to be 1 carrier per game, not 2 carriers.
I will definitely agree with you on the 1 carrier per game thing. But I also think that one thing I wanted to touch on that you didn't mention is that not only are you at a severe disadvantage against the enemy team's carrier when you have the 2 tier carrier spread, but you're severely disadvantaged against the AA of some of those higher tier ships in the game. Tier 9 ships will just annihilate tier 7 carrier points. They just can't compete.
I agree. Like when you're in a Hiryu and you're taking your planes against an Iowa, good luck. Good luck getting close enough to even do anything. And that is a good thing that they're fixing the carriers. They should not see, a 2-tier spread, because 1, the planes are slower. There are so many intricacies to carriers that I don't even know, because I don't really play carriers, that are being affected by this. But now at least you know that if you have a Lexington, at least the Lexington, won't see a Haku, or you won't see 2 tiers above you, so you can actually play the game.
Yeah, I think that it's going to work out as well. So there are a few other changes, including a new co-op mode and voice chat in the game. I don't think we really need to talk too much about those. I guess the only thing I would say is I think that it's great that they're going to have voice chat in the game, but I feel like most people that are divisioning are already using like something like TeamSpeak. So I think it's great that it's going to be in there. I don't know that it's going to be like the most used thing.
I agree, but I mean, at least it's an option for people in the game, because I have seen divisions that have been formed in the game, and maybe they do have a TeamSpeak or a Discord, or I mean, there's all kinds of different things they could talk on, but maybe it give them the opportunity to communicate, which maybe will help them.
Yeah, I guess the one thing that I didn't think about until you said it is that what this may do, and I really hope it does, is increase the number of people that see somebody in the game and be like, "Hey, I want a division with you," and but they just say, "Hey, we don't have a voice chat." Now they're going to have something to go together. So maybe we'll see more people that are just like talking to each other in the games and being like, "Hey, look, let's form a division." So I think that could be a really good thing if that's what starts happening with the voice chat.
I agree. The biggest thing that I've always had, one of the biggest complaints I've always had, is the community doesn't have very many ways to interact with the community. I mean, you have the forums and you have Reddit. Maybe you have some TeamSpeaks if you hop on them. But the actual game needs, an in-game way of meeting new people. And that'll cause more people to play the game. If more people are meeting more people, they'll, word of mouth. And I think that's a good thing that they're finally adding some changes to help that.
I agree. So let's move on real quick to our tactics section and talk a little bit about flags and consumables. What kind of flags and consumables do you use on your ships, and do you sometimes take them off when you're at times, or do you sometimes add them on for certain reasons? And do you use premium consumables like the premium repair kit, and what kind of ships do you use those on?
I use premium consumables on every ship, whether it's the Mikasa or the Yamato. The ability to reduce the time it takes to repair, the time to use your heal, it's a big deal. And I didn't actually notice this and remember how long the normal repair is until I was on the public test the other day, and I forgot to change them. And I'm sitting there like, man, it's going to take me forever. I'm looking at the clock and it says like 2 minutes or something. I'm like, oh man, this is going to take forever to repair. And of course they get lit on fire and it just burns out. The premium consumables, if you have premium time for the game, or if you have some credits, make sure you're using premium consumables. It'll not only help you, but it'll help the team.
I completely agree. And, a lot of times, when you have the premium consumable gives you an extra charge of it. So like an extra smoke screen or an extra speed boost or an extra battleship heal. So I agree. I use them on all my ships now. And you're right. If you're playing it on a premium account, it's a lot easier to make the economics work of spending the extra 22,500 credits for each of those.
Yes, and make sure you're spending credits. Make not doubloons when you do it. Make sure you hit
absolutely
the little drop down, and you make sure you have it selected on credits. Because I've seen posts on the forums and on Reddit where people have said, I've wasted all my doubloons and can't figure out why. And it's because they had the doubloons selected and not the credits.
Yeah, good safety tip right there. What about flags?
Flags? If you're in a destroyer, make sure you're at a high tier destroyer. Now let me put an emphasis on that. Make sure you're wearing your det flag. There's nothing like seeing your fellow gearing go try and cap a point, and all of a sudden it says detonation or a shim or whatever it may be. Make sure you're at high tiers. I would say probably 8 or higher. Make sure you're using your det flags if you have them. Now I know det flags are sometimes hard to come by because you have to get detonated to get them, unless you played ranked. But a lot of people that played ranked probably used their det flags up that they earned from ranked.
I used a ton of mine. I had a stockpile, and I got some more while I was playing ranked, but I still went through a ton of them.
See, and there's an example right there of even though you earned a bunch, you still used them. And I would recommend anything 8 or higher, use your det flag. I mean, if you get detonated and a Nicholas, okay. I mean, you've earned some det flags. But if you get detonated in a Shimakaze, I mean, not only is that going to hurt you, I mean, you get your flags out of it, I guess, but you're going to lose a bunch of credits, and you're probably going to get laughed at. And that might be the worst part, not losing the credits, but getting laughed at and asked a million times why you didn't use your det flags.
That is one of the things that, as a destroyer captain, I would, if I didn't have det flags, I'd be really tempted to use that new module they put in 058 of the 70% detonation reduction. But as long as I have det flags, I would really rather use the good module for my main guns. You know what I mean?
Correct. And when you think about it, maybe if you're playing an IGNDD, maybe you use the magazine.
That's a good point.
Maybe you do, because you're a torp boat before a gun boat. You'll still use your guns if you're a good DD captain, but you tend to use your torps more. So maybe
but the new module actually helps your torps structure as well. It's main armaments now.
Yeah, so maybe if you're an IGNDD, you use the. I've never used it because I like to have my guns. I like my guns being prominent, but maybe you do use it. Maybe that helps you. I don't know. I've never tested it.
One thing to note about those, if you were playing when those were released, you probably got a whole bunch of those magazine modules. You can actually mount those on a ship that doesn't have a module in that slot and sell it for credits. I think it's like 60,000 credits. It's not a lot, but you can make a little money off those. So, public tip there for you, if you have a bunch of those sitting around.
I've personally done that. I had over 40 of them, and I've sold most of them. Not like I don't necessarily need the credits, but it's more of I'm kind of OCD when it comes to modules. I like to have everything even. So when I saw a huge stack on one of them, I'm like, I got to get rid of those.
I guess another thing about flags that I wanted to make a point about is you get it the first time you get some of the achievements, you get 10 of those flags for the day. So the first time that you get Confederate, you get 10 of those flags. The first time you get Crack and Release, you get 10 of the XP flags. So if you're trying each day to at least get a couple of those, it helps you build up a stockpile of those flags even when the ranked isn't available.
Correct. And to touch on which flags to use for what ships, if you're in a battleship, I highly recommend using the flag that reduces flooding time, fire, consumables, and the amount of HP that's healed, I believe.
Yeah, I use that one a lot.
Make sure you're using those on battle if you have them. I know some of the flags are harder than earned than others, but if you have those flags, make sure you're using them on those especially for battleship. You can use the ramming flag if you want, but that's not needed. If you're using a higher tier ship, I would suggest using the repair cost reduction flag. Everybody's going to use different flags for different ships, but I would recommend those for battleships. And I am primarily a battleship player, and I use those because, honestly, in a battleship, you're going to be on fire, you're going to be eating torpedoes, you're going to be healing. You need to be using those flags.
Yeah. The other one to keep in mind for those that you're playing cruisers, and you're trying to light fires, there's a couple of different flags that you will increase your fire chance by 1% for each flag. They come with some negatives, so you got to be careful of that. But they do exist, and they are kind of useful, especially if you're playing something like a Zao, which you're trying to set fires without being seen. So the negative doesn't matter quite as much in that particular circumstance.
I agree, and I believe the Zao with the flags gets to be like 24% fire chance.
Yeah, something ridiculous.
That's ridiculous. I don't know the exact numbers for when you fire all the shells. What are the chances per shell of lighting a fire? I don't know. But 24%, that sounds pretty good to me. And I play this out a lot. And, I don't know if the chance is actually quote unquote 24%, but when you look at that number, you're like, man, that's a high chance. And I don't know.
Well, there's some math to keep in mind as well. There's more to it than just that. The base chance is 24% or whatever it is for the Zao. But you have to factor in that they may have some things that decrease the likelihood that they're going to get set on fire on their ship. And then each ship has a base fire chance. And the tier 10 battleships, they both have about a 50% reduction in chance to get set on fire. So that interacts with the percentages. So it's a sliding scale. they list that so that you can kind of have a comparison with each ship, but that isn't you're not going to set a fire every 4 hits and is out. It's just not going to happen because there's other things to keep in mind. But that said, let's move on and say hello to DerekSlide, who we're going to bring on for an interview.
Hey, Derek, how you doing, buddy?
Today we have DerekSlide from Twitch.tv streamer. He come here to join us for an interview. So welcome to the podcast, Derek. And I was going to start out with the first question of what inspires you to stream.
Well, first of all, thank you for the welcome. Second of all, to answer your question, the inspiration streaming provide entertainment and also to treat the people that are coming to my stream, the important people that they are. That is to say that when people come to be entertained, I offer a more personal experience. And the reason for that is I genuinely find people to be the most interesting, I don't know what to call it, phenomenon on this planet.
Fair enough. So did you start streaming with World of Warships, or were you streaming before you decided to start playing World of Warships?
No, I actually did start streaming with World of Warships. I had been playing World of Tanks, and I've also played several other games, and I was aware of Twitch.tv because I was playing Hearthstone at one point and had started watching Crip, but I had never entertained the thought of streaming myself. Near August, a friend of mine asked me why I did not stream, considering the fact that I, enjoyed World of Warships and was really good at it. And I said, oh, what the hell? I'll do it. That way you guys can watch. And it simply grew from there. I think it was just being myself.
Gotcha. And do you have a tagline for your stream?
There are several. I mean, I think the one I stick to the most is stay salty. But the reality is there are so many taglines now, so many one-liners, like always lucky. To my stream, I feel like a new one gets invented every day, which is fun.
I always like that you tell people welcome to the salt mine whenever they join your stream.
Yeah, I think it's important to welcome people. I mean, not everybody's going to appreciate it, but those that do will, and that's me.
Gotcha. So how many subscribers do you have on Twitch?
Well, I'm not partnered, so I actually don't have any subscribers. And ironically, I don't remember the exact number of followers I have. Some people look at this, look at me and say, it's a form of disorganization. I think they are, I've had one person say this to me naked. I think I focus more on repeat viewers, people that when I recognize their tags, and I micromanage my relationships with them in my memory palace. So there are people, for example, one of my mods, Fuel Hauler, who's been watching me stream for almost a year now. And, I've developed a fairly good relationship with this person, yet I've never met him face to face. And in terms of repeat viewers, I would submit that I get anywhere from 40 to 80 on average, with peaks of 100 plus.
That's really good.
I remember most of their names. Sometimes people will come back months later. They'll say something. I'll say, hey, long time no see. It's been months. And they will be shocked because I took the time to remember them. So
that's really good because I'm terrible with names. If I didn't have the people's names in TeamSpeak of who was in Overpowered Gaming, I would never remember their names.
I don't know. I'm blessed with an almost eidetic memory, so when it comes to remembering people, unless, of course, they've left me with a negative experience, usually I remember everybody.
Excellent. So what made you first start playing World of Warships, and when did you first start playing? Were you in the alphas or the betas or anything?
I actually got in on a weekend beta test, and what made me start playing World of Warships? Well, was an avid World of Tanks player. Of course, World of Warships was announced, I believe, in 2008 by Wargaming, maybe 2009, and I immediately grew very excited because my friends and I had been saying, oftentimes to ourselves, "God, it'd be nice if Wargaming would do a naval battle." I've always preferred naval battles since I was a kid to tanks or planes.
I'm right there with you. One of the first video games I ever played in 1990 was Great Naval Battles. I don't know. It was you could either play as the Germans or the English, and you would manage their fleets through a thing, and you're always trying to build your ships. And I was like, oh man, I really got to get to the Bismarck, and then you could replay things that happened, the Battle of the Denmark Strait and stuff like that. I always had a great time with that game.
I never had a chance to play that one, but I'll tell you a game that I think almost every kid played universally in the bathtub with the shooty boats, rubber boats, or the rubber duckies, depending on what you had. I had a few, what's it called? Rubber boats, and that's where it started. Then later on, a model. And later on, after that, I started watching Star Trek, and Star Trek just naturally lends itself to naval battles, and it just kept going from there. I mean, I couldn't pinpoint exactly when I knew that naval battles were my thing, but I can tell you that, even when I started playing World of Tanks, I was like, this is cool, but the Navy is much cooler.
I'm right there with you. I played World of Tanks for quite a long time. And then I heard that they were going to be releasing World of Battleships, is what they called it at the time.
Yes.
And so I grew very excited when I heard that, because I've always been a huge fan of naval warships, and especially the World War II naval warships. So is there a favorite ship that you like to play in-game, or favorite ship class?
Oh, boy. I guess I'll go with class more than favorite ship. I like battleships the best. They're what I do best in. But a favorite ship, it's really hard to pin down because I have so many. I guess it would be the Tirpitz. I mean, long story short, it's the one I have the most battles in. It's the one I had the most fun in. So, probably the Tirpitz. Probably battleships.
You say had the most fun in. Has your opinion changed?
Well, lately it's been the New Mexico. But, I mean, who knows? In a week's time, I might start playing the Montana a lot. I think the thing about World of Warships that I like so much is that there are many good ships, and for me, I don't feel like I need to settle on one to have fun. I can just jump around and play quite a few of them and enjoy the game.
I would completely agree. Last week, Kami and I talked about that we both have been very much enjoying the Arizona since it came out a couple of weeks ago. Have you had a chance to play that ship?
Yes, it was gifted to me actually by a friend, and if you're listening, thank you very much. The Arizona plays similarly to the New Mexico. I did have a chance to give her a shot. I don't know. I didn't feel as invulnerable as I did in my New Mexico. I was taking some damage from some shots I thought were somewhat strange, but overall I thought it was a very good ship.
I've been particularly enjoying the what I felt like was the accuracy of the guns. I felt like I got much better groupings of shells than I ever did in my New Mexico.
Yeah, I noticed the same thing. Albeit, I don't think I have more than five games in it. But I did notice it seemed to have less of a shotgun effect.
For sure. So, do you have any plans going forward for your stream? Is there anything that your streamers should be looking forward to in the future from you?
Well, definitely more of the same. I mean, lately I've been streaming some Hearts of Iron. That's another fun game. Hearts of Iron 4 that I've been streaming, and God knows those streams have been jam-packed with people watching, and not only that, people saying that they've never seen a game of Hearts of Iron 4 so screwed up before. on other streams, and I really like to kind of push the envelope on this in the sense, like, some people say I like to have fun by being the best at something. Well, I like to have fun any way I can have fun. If that is by screwing up the game so much that all you can do is sit there and laugh, I consider that a success. So, more of the same things, and always focused on people and having fun and positivity.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time, Derek, and I hope that your stream continues to go well.
Thank you.
Well, that's it for episode 2, guys. Thank you very much for listening, and good luck in the contest. A couple of things that are coming. We've been in contact with Wargaming, and they've agreed to send somebody onto our show in the future. That may not be next week because they said that they're trying to focus on getting the 059 patch out. But after the 059 patch out, look out for somebody from Wargaming coming to visit. We also have a few other people that we're talking to as far as guests to come by, and we will keep you guys in the loop. That's it from me. Did you have anything coming?
I just want to say thank you for listening. And yes, we do have some awesome people coming up that I think you will enjoy hearing their perspective on the game. You hear our perspective, and you've heard, you'll hear Derek's, and you've heard Doc's, but now, we want to expand on who we're going to bring in and let you hear, from Wargaming themselves and from some other interesting people that, we're not going to announce just yet, but they will be here in the future.
Take care.
Have a good one.